Welcome to the Awaken on Purpose podcast, where each week you'll receive insight, inspiration, and advice for aligning your mind, body, and spirit to achieve a fulfilled life and live your purpose with me, your host, Jennifer Spohr. You'll also hear from other leaders who share their inspirational stories and wisdom in living fulfilled, on purpose, and making an impact. If you're a mission-driven leader and you're passionate about learning and integrating all the things that empower you to live and lead a fulfilled, purpose-led life, this is the show for you. It's my absolute pleasure to welcome as a guest to the show today, Dr. Alison Horstmeyer. She is a leading-edge talent development consultant, executive coach, and humanistic researcher. Her research focuses on curiosity and associated mental, emotional, and motivational attributes. Alison is considered one of the pioneering practitioners in the workplace curiosity. Welcome, Alison. We had a few minutes to chat prior to this, and I'm already loving our conversation, so I can't wait to dive right in. So let's kick things off by just, if you could share more about your background and really,
Sure.
What is your why behind the work that you're doing?
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me here. I so love the work that you're doing. It's so important for us to be connected to our purpose and our why as we navigate, especially during these times. And I spent quite a bit of time as a business development executive at the intersection of media and tech. And it was during that time I really noticed, considerable amount of anxiety and complacency and stress around me, and also, wanting to understand different leadership styles. And I had been through leadership development programs, and there were some things that really resonated with me and some that didn't. And so I went back to academia to study the connection between mind and body. There's a whole research around integrative practices and psychoimmunology, and really what we think and feel really affects our physiology, our physical nature, and how things manifest as disease, right? And disease can be dis-ease, so essentially we really need to be maybe to managing our stress. And I also looked at other disciplines, social science and behavioral science, and I got certified as a yoga instructor. I'm a longtime yoga practitioner. I got certified as a coach. And it was during my mindfulness research that I came to an idea that was, could you be curious and anxious all at the same time? And unfortunately, that was incredibly naive, but it led me down this really rich, non-linear path into the world and research of curiosity, only to come back to anxiety, because anxiety is an indelible part of our curiosity. Emergent in the research is the stress tolerance of curiosity. So that's how we manage the stress and discomfort along the way of exploring into unfamiliar and new territory. And my why now is through my talent development consultancy and my executive coaching is really, how do we enliven that curiosity that's so critical to build our self-awareness about ourselves, to connect with our core values, our mission statement, so then we can really show up in the authentic ways that we know that is possible for each of us, because then that's how we will engage in really meaningful interpersonal dynamics as well.
Absolutely. I find the work that you're doing really fascinating, and I believe that curiosity is actually, and just the desire to learn is our natural state of mind. Anxiety, I believe, disease, as you mentioned, and you describe it just that way so perfectly, is that it results from earlier events, mostly in our childhood, right, that trigger those behaviors. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so we are, as I'm standing here before you, as we're talking to each other, we are an amalgamation of our experiences. Yeah. And that informs really a subjective lens of how we view the world. And if you ever read Daniel Kahneman's work, Thinking Fast and Slow, he calls it the inside view. And it's really incumbent upon us to recognize how our inside view can really skew the lens of what we are perceiving as reality, of what we are thinking is transpiring in the present moment. And so a part of curiosity is reflection and pausing. And just, and that's why you also see in the research, there is a mindfulness scale that has curiosity as a factor of that, because you do need to say, wait a minute, what's really happening here? What am I missing? Why do I believe what I do? And how can I be wrong? And I often work with executives to start getting a practice of that reflection. So, part of coaching, as you know, is to go experiment with new practices and new behaviors to see how can I lead differently, for example, and then to reflect on what went well and what didn't. And, I just had an executive text me yesterday, and she said, she's like, any wisdom for me? Because now I'm questioning how I showed up in meetings. And we went through a series of questions via text, which was, what are the triggers of the story? And then I go to, if you ever go to Byron Katie's work, the 4 questions, and I literally had her do the 4 questions of, what about the story? Is the story true? How do I absolutely know the story is true? How do I act and feel when I believe the story? And who am I without the story? And just having her go through those questions, she was like, oh, wow, I need to reconnect with my mission, my value statement, and focus on the work and not worry about the noise and the comparison and, the judgment.
Yeah. Especially that last question.
Yes,
right?
I love the last question.
Because I know I experienced this in my prior background and career as well, but we often allow ourselves to get wrapped up in terms of our identity in our job, and we really aren't. Our work or a job or a career is a component of us. It's a part of us, but not the essence of who we are. I think it's actually a great segue into the next question I had for you, which is, spirituality, our core beliefs and values. I view that as really just being the epicenter of who we are, despite it being such a big part of who each of us is. It's still largely missing from the landscape of the workplace. What are your thoughts on that? Because I see a shift that is happening, but we still have a long way to go.
Yes, yeah. And, the definition of spirituality can be really broad. It can have a faith-based context, or it can have maybe a more Eastern slant, or, I just feel like we can define spirituality in a way that's really personal to each individual, that it doesn't have to be this very traditional form of religion, so to speak. If that's your preference, that's great. But you know what I mean? It doesn't have to be so
absolutely.
It doesn't have to be so prescriptive.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to kind of set the tone for the answer to the question, right? So how I look at spirituality is really the same definition that you would probably get if you Googled it, which is just really the intangible, right, part of us. So our beliefs and our values, and I think you had mentioned this as well, is that can look different for each of us. And in terms of my own personal beliefs, I don't associate spirituality directly to religion. It's not necessarily, it's not one and the same.
Yeah, I think fundamentally goes back to authenticity and what are the tools that we can enable and use to really nurture that authenticity. And in my research and in my work that I do with clients, we spend a lot of time clarifying core values and their mission statement. And I would say, but weighted even more to the core values, because emergent in my research, the study that I did and in research before me, there is potentially a relationship between values and how you're curious. And if you look at the Schwartz model, Shalom Schwartz, he created a human values model system. There are certain values that are more about preservation, and literally like security is a value, or tradition or conformity. I'm not saying you can't have those values. What I am saying is that they can tend to be anxiety inducing, because it's about self-preservation. Whereas if we go to autonomy and stimulation and things that are really supported for openness to change, those tend to be anxiety reducers. And so if I see in my work, for example, I have one executive who I'm working on for executive presence. He really values security. His DISC is also very high on the controlling, but he also has the value of courage and family. And so, using those other values to kind of counterbalance the security when the security is kicking up the anxiety. So then we can have him go practice and explore how showing up, activating courage looks like when he's presenting, let's say, to the board, and realizing that there's different shifts that he has control over, and he can connect to his value and of courage and be standing in his full potentiality of what he's there to do.
Yeah, I love that. What do you think? I mean, I really feel like, when it comes to, I think security and feeling safe is a great example, that's really more of a state of being. And a lot of people are conditioned to believe that it's something external, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, and just to say, yes, obviously we need money and certain things.
Yeah, the Maslow hierarchy of needs is real.
Exactly, that's real,
Yeah.
We need that. But I feel like we ultimately create that sense of security from within. And if we're just looking externally, that's not really giving us the sense of fulfillment that we desire.
Yeah, you can have drive and passion. Those are really beautiful things. And we want those channeled in a really productive way. It's when those, the cognitive biases kick in and like action bias goes into overdrive, and that turns into, overconfidence, and you're not like recognizing the contradictory information or the red flags along the way, so you can pivot and adjust to be able to move forward. And the reason I bring that up is because what you're describing, I think in the workplace, we're always striving for homeostasis, right? Getting back to some kind of level setting. And if nothing else, I hope people have taken away from the pandemic that we want to be in a homeodynamic way of being. Homeodynamic says we are taking in the various inputs and we're having to integrate them and really digest them in a way that helps us to evolve and grow. And I'm not saying it's comfortable. It's actually really hard work.
Yeah. It's not anyone who says that it's like the easy path.
Yeah.
It's BS. So.
But we have to like let go of homeostasis. Like you do not want to be going back to where you were. You want to be integrating those new inputs. So you're expanding and building, and your spiral is going up and broadening up to a new level. And then you start again. It's because otherwise you're spiraling down into status quo and like, this very like expert, linear, narrow mindset and you're going to get actually more anxiety, more stress, because you're going to get left behind even more because the change is happening so much, then you're going to get overwhelmed. So how do we like methodically start integrating these new experiences to prepare us for even more change?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a big question. So, I mean, I feel like, I'm certainly not minimizing the loss, that has occurred with the last year or two of everything that's been going on in the world. However, I also believe that with every experience that we have, including this time in our world, it serves a higher purpose and opportunity for learning as well. I feel like with the pandemic and all that's happening, it's really just continuing to bring to light all the systems that we've had in place for so long that really don't work. And it, the need for change is apparent. I believe that, and I just posted something about this morning, right? That starts within us, right? Within each of us, and each of us has an opportunity to contribute with that change. But it starts with, you had mentioned one of your clients having the value of courage, right? It starts with that and finding your voice. And so I know that's a big question. What are your thoughts on just all of that?
Yeah, I do love that what you're describing is that we can influence those around us, whether it's a small community, a big community, who we interact with. Yeah. It does start with us, and opening our point of view and seeing how we can be more inclusive and more accepting of different points of view. I'm in an interracial relationship that certainly through our time recently, we had a lot more open dialogue about what his experiences were as growing up as a Black young man than we probably had in our entire relationship. It was such a great opportunity to really understand and connect with that part of him. And, how can you just take it on to have more of those kinds of conversations in your immediate circle? Because I think there's a tendency for us to think if we can't swing really big and wide and make massive change, then we should do nothing. That's absolutely not the case. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Get curious. Invite, part of curiosity is it's active. It's not passive. It's not just observing and leaning back. It's active or exploration, and there's a level of openness involved. And so how can you explore and engage with others in a more open way? So there's being inquisitive, and there's asking open-ended questions, because you can also weaponize questions. So if we can learn how to ask, open-ended questions that usually start with a what and how, and then see how open you are to what's coming into you, and check yourself. Check yourself, because I know there are times, like I had a conversation with a colleague yesterday and I could feel myself just shutting down, getting triggered. Coaches need coaches. I mean, we get triggered all day long.
Do. Yeah.
And my point is we are getting triggered, and to just notice, like, I have my mindfulness instructor, she was great. She would say, just go, oh, interesting, to kind of like pause it and see, like, what's that about?
Yeah, absolutely. Take an observer role. And whenever we're triggered, I just view that as an opportunity, right, for healing and for learning. It all goes back to curiosity. I know that you were saying earlier, I mean, we have to be inquisitive, and also just seeking to being curious about where can we further align our thoughts and actions with our beliefs and values.
Yeah. And certainly through our life cycle, because people ask me, do values change? Yes, they do change over the course of your life cycle. And so it is good to revisit them, every now and then, and to see, are these still my values today. And certainly, when I've done, there are curiosity assessments that you can do to measure those different dimensions. And it's interesting to get people's observations of, wow, like, I think my stress tolerance has actually gone down as I've gotten older, or it will be like, wow, I'm so much more open than I used to be, earlier in my career. So there's definitely shifts that are going to happen along the way. And it's getting clear of who you want to be now in this current iteration. And then as you're moving through life and your career and through your experiences, well, check back in, maybe in a year or two. How's it going? Who do you want to become next? Right? Who am I becoming? That is always absolutely. A great question.
Absolutely. And I love that you referenced the now as well, because energetically, really our power to create whatever we desire is in the now. And if you're in the past, you can't change the past and what happened. You can look at what the lessons are and keep those. But also, if you're spending too much of your energy in the future, that only exists in potential. Your future is really by where you're choosing to focus your energy now.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I think that's why I've always gravitated and stayed with yoga, because so much of yogic philosophy is about letting go of the past, being present, the now, and the, I love the symbolism of the lotus, right? The lotus is this beautiful flower that comes out of sludge and like yuck. And it's really about how we birth new evolutions of ourselves, that we have to kind of slug through the mud and the and then we get to blossom into this beautiful lotus. And it's a continuous cycle.
I love that. Another flower that's a favorite of mine is the sunflower, because it actually faces the light. It faces the sun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Love that. Alison, in closing, is there anything else that you're feeling guided to bring forward for the listeners today?
I know it sounds cliche, and it's so true, though. It's a journey. And no, there is opportunity. It's not always easy, and to be kind to yourself during the process, and take the time to celebrate and really savor the what you perceive as a small win, because a win is a win.
Yeah, it is important to celebrate the wins. I'm glad you brought that up, because many people are programmed, to be critical, and there's really just a lot to celebrate and a lot to be grateful for, but not grateful in the way of settling, grateful, but from a place of aspiring for more.
Yeah. And it's an emotional journey. I don't subscribe to toxic positivity. I think that's such a great term. We want to recognize our emotions, and those are okay. And then it's, how do we literally digest those in a way that can be more supportive? And that's a process in itself and can take time. So I think we have to allow ourselves to have the time, and as I said, be kind to ourselves in the process.
Absolutely. Alison, thank you so much for taking time to speak with me today. I just love what you're doing, and I loved our conversation, and thank you for sharing your wisdom.
Oh, thank you so much for having me here. It was great fun, and it's a rich conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, I had fun too. Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Awaken on Purpose podcast. Please visit me and subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or at awakenonpurpose.com so you never miss an episode. To learn more about how you can achieve a fulfilled life, live your purpose, and make an impact as a mission-driven leader, visit me at jenniferspore.com. And while you're there, be sure to join Awaken on Purpose, the community, to connect, collaborate, and grow in business and life with others who are like-minded.